The Viking Age, spanning roughly from the close of the 8th to the dawn of the 11th century, remains one of history's most enthralling and frequently misunderstood eras. The Norsemen, renowned for their seafaring prowess, extensive raids, and far-reaching expeditions, also maintained a variety of customs that were as shocking as they were fundamental to their society. By examining these lesser-known aspects of Viking life, we uncover the unsettling truths behind their most enigmatic rituals. The Viking berserkers. These combatants were far more than ordinary soldiers. They were the embodiment of savagery and an almost supernatural power. The term berserker is derived from the Old Norse words bear and serker, which suggests these warriors either wore bearskins into battle or, metaphorically, fought with the untamed fury of the beast itself. Known in Old Norse as berserker, these men would charge into the fray in a state of untamed frenzy, frequently casting off their armor and relying on sheer force and psychological terror. Their warfare tactics were both unconventional and horrifying. According to Icelandic sagas, they entered a trance-like state known as the berserker gang, howling like wild animals, biting their shields, and charging with absolutely no regard for their own safety into the enemy lines. This fury made them nearly invincible on the battlefield, appearing immune to power, all pain, and capable of extraordinary feats of physical strength. The very concept of the berserker gang has led certain scholars to speculate that these warriors may have used psychotropic substances to achieve this state of rage. Some propose the ingestion of hallucinogenic mushrooms like amanita muscaria, while others suggest the consumption of henbane. There is, however, no formal evidence to substantiate these theories, and the debate continues to this day. Their uncontrollable violence could sometimes be turned against their own kin, leading to their being outlawed in some Scandinavian regions. As Christianity began to spread throughout the Viking world, the pagan rites and the violent nature of the berserkers became increasingly inconsistent with the new religious order, which ultimately contributed to their gradual decline. Ritual tattoos. The image of the tattooed Viking is iconic, yet the evidence for this practice is more elusive than one might actually believe. Although direct archaeological traces are lacking due to the natural decomposition of organic tissues over centuries, historical accounts offer captivating glimpses into this cultural practice. One of the most specific descriptions we have comes from the Arab traveller Ahmad ibn Fadlan in the 10th century, who encountered the Rus Vikings on his journey toward the Volga River. He described these people as being heavily tattooed, from the very tips of their fingers up to their necks, bearing intricate designs that resembled trees, serpents, and various other symbols. Tattooing in the Viking era would have been a painful and laborious process. The tools likely included needles fashioned from bone or metal, using an ink created from soot, ash, or various plant-based dyes. Designs were inscribed into the skin using a method similar to modern tattooing, but which utterly lacked any advanced hygiene or methods of pain relief. The symbolic significance of these markings varied widely, often reflecting the bearer's personal beliefs, achievements, or social standing. Ritual cannibalism. This is perhaps one of the most profoundly disturbing practices attributed to the Vikings, and while this phenomenon was certainly not widespread, instances within historical records and archaeological findings suggest that it did occur under very specific circumstances. The Norse sagas, which often blend history with legend, make mention of acts of anthropophagy among warriors. These acts were sometimes depicted as being an integral part of a ritual intended to absorb the strength of fallen enemies or to send a terrifying message to their foes. The archaeological evidence for Viking cannibalism is scarce yet compelling. Within certain burial sites, particularly in the British Isles, human bones bearing distinct cut marks have been discovered, suggesting that they were defleshed in a manner that is consistent with cannibalistic practices. The interpretation of these findings, however, remains highly controversial. Some experts argue that these marks might be the result of post-mortem dismemberment rituals rather than anthropophagy. Others propose that such actions were driven by extreme circumstances like famine instead of being motivated by cultural or ritualistic reasons. Human sacrifice. These offerings formed a fundamental pillar of Norse religious practices intrinsically linked to their cosmology and their core beliefs. The Vikings performed a type of ritual offering known as a blot, which was celebrated to honor the gods and to curry their favor. Although these blots could include gifts of animals, food, or valuable objects, numerous accounts and archaeological evidence indicate that human sacrifices did take place, especially during major events or times of crisis. One of the most detailed reports comes from Adam of Bremen, a German chronicler who described the Great Temple at Uppsala. An 11th century account details a great Swedish festival every 9 years, where 9 males of every species, humans included, were offered to the gods. Victims were then suspended in a sacred grove near the temple, where their bodies decomposed as offerings. Human sacrifice was then considered an absolutely vital practice to guarantee prosperity and protection, as Vikings believed their gods required blood to maintain balance between the divine and mortal worlds. Cremation of a thrall, the historical Viking age, was defined by a strict hierarchy where slaves, known as thralls, occupied society's lowest stratum. Thralls held a major role in Viking society, alive or dead. One of the most famous accounts on funeral rites with slaves comes from Ahmad ibn Fadlan. His text offers a rare, detailed description of an ancient rite, including a handmaiden's sacrifice. According to Ibn Fadlan, on a chieftain's death, his body was laid on a ship with weapons, treasures, and sometimes animals. The most shocking part of this funeral rite was sacrificing an enslaved girl, chosen to follow her late master to the afterlife. Ibn Fadlan's text describes the girl getting intoxicating drinks before being led into a tent, where she was then ceremonially strangled and stabbed by the chieftain's closest kinswoman, her body then joining the pyre near the dead nobleman. Historians widely debate if the slave's participation in this ritual was voluntary. While Ibn Fadlan shows a girl accepting her fate, the context implies she had very little real choice. The ritual's nature also highlights the Vikings' profound conviction in the necessity of such deeds to honor the dead and secure their passage into the afterlife. The ritual of the blood eagle. The most cruel and disputed Viking ritual is doubtless the blood eagle, a particular execution method. It has fascinated historians and the public. This rite is described in several Norse sagas as an especially brutal form of torture and execution, reserved for their most hated foes. The ritual involved cutting open the back, separating the ribs from the spine, and pulling out the lungs through the wounds to create a pair of wings. This act was reportedly done while the victim still lived, making it one of the most gruesome execution methods on record. The Vikings were a people of strong contrasts, fierce warriors and able navigators, but also profoundly spiritual, tied to traditions both magnificent and horrifying. When revealing the secrets of the Viking era, it is essential to approach their history with respect and curiosity. Even though certain traditions may seem foreign to us today, or perhaps even abominable, they were an integral part of the Viking lifestyle and offer a precious glimpse into their worldview. If this exploration of Viking traditions fascinated you as much as us, remember to like this video, subscribe and activate the bell to receive notifications. There is still much more to discover in the rich and complex history of the ancient world.